All right, so get ready because today we're going to dive into like this amazing topic, Mahamudra meditation. And get this, we're going to be like weaving in some super interesting insights from Western psychology about, how we see the world, how we perceive the world. It's going to be, I hope, like mind-blowing, seriously.
You're in for a wild ride for sure.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating how these two disciplines, Eastern thought and Western psychology, often thought of as like completely separate, but they really converge in some pretty amazing and unexpected ways.
Yeah, it is fascinating. So let's unpack this. What do you say? Our guide for this deep dive is a dissertation by Daniel B. Brown. It's called Stages of Mahamudra Meditation. Now, before you run away thinking dissertation, boring, right? We're here to make sure it's anything but. The core idea we're going to be tackling today is how our minds construct our realities. Think about that for a second. Our minds are constructing what we experience as being real.
Yeah, and it's a concept called constructivism, and it really challenges kind of like the naive way that we tend to view the world. We kind of go through life thinking that we're experiencing reality directly, as if our senses are just passively recording everything around us.
Like a video camera.
Exactly, like a perfectly accurate video camera.
Yeah.
But the reality is much more intricate and honestly, way more fascinating. Our minds are not passive. They're not just receiving information. They're actively shaping and filtering, editing. It's like our brains are Hollywood directors creating our own personal blockbuster movies.
Okay, so our minds are the directors. Got it. But how does that actually, how does that work? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so think about how we recognize everyday objects. A chair, for example.
Yeah.
You can see a chair across the room, right? You can see a child's drawing of a chair. You can see the word chair written on a page, and your brain instantly knows that's a chair.
Right.
Even though the sensory information that you're getting is completely different, your mind has categorized it all under that same label. So that's constructivism in action.
Wow. That's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it. It's like our brains have this whole filing system, based on our experiences, our beliefs, even cultural influences, and it's constantly shaping how we see the world, how we experience the world. So the big question is, if our minds are so busy constructing all the time, can we deconstruct? Can we peek behind the curtain? Can we see what's really going on in there?
And that is where things get really interesting, and that is where Mahamudra meditation comes in.
Mahamudra meditation. Think of it as the ultimate brain hack. Stay tuned because we're about to unravel the secrets of Mahamudra and how it can help us dismantle those mental constructs to glimpse this reality that's usually hidden from view. Okay, we've established our minds are these master architects, right? They're constantly building, shaping our realities. But how does Mahamudra meditation actually help us deconstruct all of that, what our minds have so carefully built?
Well, you can almost imagine Mahamudra meditation as like a mental toolkit, a system that's designed to dismantle those constructs and all those mental habits that kind of keep them in place.
I like that, a mental toolkit. Okay, so what tools are we talking about? How does it actually work?
So it's a gradual process. It's a series of stages that progressively refine your attention and your awareness. So it's not like flipping a switch. It's more like, learning a new language or mastering a musical instrument.
Yeah, it's a process for sure. And Brown, he outlines 6 stages of Mahamudra practice in the dissertation, right?
That's right, yeah. And these stages they're really fascinating because they take us on this journey from very practical techniques like focusing on your breath to some really, really mind-bending experiences.
And speaking of mind-bending, there's this one stage that really, it caught my eye. It's called the non-dissolution experience.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when I first read it, I was like, what in the world does that even mean?
It does sound a little bit like a contradiction, doesn't it? But that's part of what makes it so intriguing. In this stage, practitioners describe a kind of breakdown of ordinary perception. So the usual boundaries that we experience between, ourselves and the world, between subject and object, they begin to kind of dissolve.
Okay, so things start to dissolve, but it's not like a bad trip kind of dissolving, right?
No, not at all. It's not like a descent into chaos or nothingness. Instead, what they describe is this really profound sense of unity, of interconnectedness. So imagine experiencing the world without those usual filters and separations,
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So it's not that things cease to exist, but it's the way that you experience them, the very fabric of your perception undergoes this fundamental shift. It's like your mind is suddenly tuning into a different frequency of reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like suddenly seeing the code behind the matrix.
Yes. Exactly. And what's even more fascinating is that this whole idea of altered states of consciousness, of like shifting how our minds experience reality, it's not just, some like Eastern mysticism thing. Western psychology has been exploring similar territory, and there's a surprising degree of overlap. Wait, really? So we're talking about Western science kind of backing up what these ancient meditation practices have been pointing to for centuries.
Yeah, absolutely. And the dissertation, it actually bridges this gap by bringing in the work of Charles Tart. He's a prominent Western psychologist who dedicated his career to studying states of consciousness.
Okay, so Charles Tart, states of consciousness. Sounds like we're about to connect some major dots here. What exactly did Tart discover, and how does it relate to Mahamudra? Okay, so we've got this Western psychologist, Charles Tart, stepping into the ring with ancient meditative practices. What happens next?
Well, Tart's work is really fascinating because he gives us this scientific framework for understanding these altered states, right? He talks about consciousness as having these three key components:
Yeah.
energy, structure, and awareness.
Energy, structure, awareness. Okay, those are some pretty big concepts. Break those down for me a little bit. What do they actually mean in terms of how our minds work?
So think of energy like the fuel, right? It powers all of our mental processes. There's all those thoughts, emotions, perceptions, everything buzzing around in our heads.
Okay.
Structure that refers to the patterns and habits our minds develop over time. So the way we organize information, the filters we use to interpret the world, all of that.
I see. So energy is like the gas and structure is like the engine. I like it. Where does awareness fit into all of this?
Awareness is the driver, right?
Yeah.
It's that ability to observe those mental processes, to step back and just witness this interplay of energy and structure without getting totally swept away by it all.
Right, right. So it's like having that bird's eye view of your own mind, kind of. Okay, so how does meditation, particularly this Mahamudra meditation, how does it affect these three components? What happens?
And this is what's so cool. Practices like focusing on the breath or even a visual object. We see this in a lot of meditative traditions, right? This can actually shift these components by calming the mind, reducing all that mental chatter. You're basically like lowering the energy level and loosening the grip of all those habitual structures.
It's like hitting the reset button on your mind, huh? No wonder people find meditation so calming and clarifying.
Exactly. And as that energy decreases and the structures loosen up, something really remarkable happens. Awareness has more space to expand. It's like you're clearing away the fog and suddenly you can see the landscape underneath.
That actually reminds me of something else we came across in the dissertation, Fisher's sensory-motor ratio. Have you heard of that? It's this idea that by reducing external input, which is what we're doing when we meditate, we're sitting quietly, focusing inward. It's like we create these profound internal shifts.
Yeah, that's another key piece of the puzzle here. If we're constantly bombarded with sights and sounds and information, all that external input, our minds get so caught up in constructing a reality based on that never-ending stream of data. But when we create space, that quiet, through meditation, our minds can finally turn their attention inward.
So by quieting the external noise, we create the space for true awareness to kind of emerge. It's like you're finally able to hear those whispers of wisdom that were always there, but just drowned out by the chaos of everything.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And what's even more intriguing is this dissertation doesn't just focus on Mahamudra. It actually compares it to other contemplative traditions like Theravada Buddhism's Visuddhimagga and the Indian Yoga Sutras.
So you're saying that these different traditions, which are separated by, centuries, different cultures, they might actually share a common path.
That is one of the most compelling takeaways from this research. While these traditions each have their own unique language, their own cultural interpretations, they all seem to converge on some really fundamental principles when it comes to cultivating awareness and understanding like the nature of reality.
Wow, that's wild. It's like they're all climbing the same mountain, but just starting from different base camps.
Exactly. And for example, all three traditions, they really emphasize refining attention, cultivating mindfulness, deconstructing those habitual ways of seeing the world. They might use different techniques or metaphors, but those underlying principles are remarkably similar.
Huh. It really makes you wonder if there isn't some kind of universal truth at the heart of it all. But even if different traditions share a similar path, doesn't the dissertation also say that our individual experiences can still be really different based on, our own beliefs and our cultural conditioning?
Absolutely. It's like we're looking at the same world, but through different colored lenses. Even if we're all using the same techniques, the same practices, our individual experiences are always going to be shaped by our unique perspectives, backgrounds, histories, all of it.
That's why those preliminary practices mentioned in the text are so important, right? It's not just about jumping into meditation, it's about laying the groundwork.
Exactly. Those preliminary practices, things like cultivating ethical conduct, being mindful in everyday life, understanding the nature of reality, all of that creates fertile ground for these seeds of awareness to really take root.
So, what does all this mean for us? I mean, here we are, 21st century, information overload, constantly bombarded with stuff. Can these ancient practices actually help us navigate this modern life?
That is the million-dollar question. And while there's no one-size-fits-all answer, the insights from both East and West seem to point to one thing: the incredible plasticity of the mind. We're not just puppets of our conditioning. We have the power to choose awareness, to step outside those habitual patterns and create a more conscious experience of reality, a more fulfilling one.
So you're saying that by understanding how our minds construct reality and by using practices like Mahamudra meditation, we can hack the system. We can take control of the narrative, direct our own mental movies.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we are not passive observers in our own lives. We have the power to choose our responses, cultivate greater awareness, and create a reality that aligns with our deepest values, our aspirations.
Well, there you have it. We've explored how our minds construct reality. We dove into the world of Mahamudra meditation and discovered some pretty surprising connections between this ancient wisdom and modern psychology. But the real journey begins now, right? So as you move through your day, pay attention. How is your mind shaping your reality? What stories are you telling yourself? What filters are you using to experience the world around you? And most importantly, how can you use this new awareness to create a more fulfilling and truly liberated life? Thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive into the nature of mind and reality. And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.